Well, Dr. Aura Sabadus is an energy expert at consultancy, the Independent Commodity Intelligence Services. Thanks ever so much for coming on the programme. Let's start with these gas flow suspensions from Ukraine to Russia. How significant is this?
Well, on the face of it, it's significant because any interruptions in gas flows could create volatility in prices and push them up, as we've seen in recent months, and we've seen indeed that the gas prices have reached record levels. There is, however, mitigating factors, not least the fact that spring demand is quite reduced, and there has also been a lot of liquefied natural gas coming into Europe, particularly from the US. In fact, we've seen record levels of LNG coming into Europe. The Ukrainian flows right now are at around 72 million cubic meters, so around 5 million cubic meters lower than the contracted volumes at this Suja border point that we've been hearing about, and where the Ukrainian gas transmission system operator has been inviting Gazprom to reroute the flows from the other border point where they are now suspended. And there are no signs that Russia is likely to reroute these flows going forward, which represent, as your reporters have already said, about a third of the contracted volumes via Ukraine. So under current circumstances, it's not a problem, but the problem is more likely to show itself as we approach the heating season.
Well, Ukraine is looking for a workaround. Russia says that's impossible. What do you think?
Well, on the one hand, Ukraine is still dependent on some of this Russian transit gas because it derives some revenue from it, and that at this moment money is critical. But on the other hand, let's not forget that Russia itself also depends on Europe and the transit through Ukraine, because right now the infrastructure, the whole transmission infrastructure in Russia is primarily geared towards the west. So there is a pipeline going to China, but most of the pipelines, and historically speaking, the transit was westward. So any disruptions in flows to Europe would ultimately also affect Russia, not only because Russia won't be able to get enough cash, but also because if the gas is stranded in Russia in terms of production, it might be very, very difficult to restart its production wells should there be a need in the future. So it's critical, absolutely critical for Russia to export and to produce this gas.
Now, what about the plans from the European Commission saying they're going to wean the bloc off Russian gas, albeit with quite a long time frame? What do you make of those plans?
Well, we have to separate here these plans, and as you mentioned, that we have a long-term plan and also a short-term plan. In the longer term, I don't think there's going to be a problem because we've already seen almost all countries that have access to high seas expressing an interest in either expanding the importing facilities for LNG or building new facilities. And of course, we're also likely to see more production coming from the US, from Qatar, and so forth. In the shorter term, it's going to be a bit of a problem because the infrastructure is not quite there yet. We are still short in terms of having enough regasification capacity, and also in terms of being able to secure enough gas, even if there was more LNG coming in, and let's assume that Norway would also ramp up exports, Algeria, Libya, and so forth. So in the shorter term, I would say 1-2 years, it's going to be difficult to completely reduce. And in fact, the European Union didn't even say that we're going to reduce entirely in the next year. It said about 2/3. But even so, it's going to be a bit tight. But let's see what winter will bring going forward.
Dr. Aura Sabadus, thank you very much.